Okay, this video is an example of what Dr. James White of Alpha and Omega Ministries calls a blind spot. I selected this one because it seems to be one of more, I suppose there's more energy surrounding it. But in 1 John 5:1, the first part, 5:1a, I suppose, it simply speaks of everyone who is believing that Jesus is the Christ, has been previously generated and continues to be generated out from the God. So let's just stop for a moment. Emphasis here is on the fact that generation precedes everyone who is believing, and this seems to be a blind spot on both hands at this moment, for it's not always noticed, nor has it ever been brought to my attention, that the generation out from the God precedes believing, ing, that's present tense, that's continuous action, so that believing follows generation. However, those perhaps who have a bias toward the Calvinistic construct of regeneration preceding believe, punctular, might not notice that this is regeneration preceding believing, ing, the continuation. So, remaining with the same author in John 20:31, it says, "These things have been written," and that's previously, "and they remain on record in order that you all might deliberately cause yourselves to believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the God." Now back to this, "you all might deliberately cause yourselves." First of all, that's subjunctive, so it's deliberative subjunctive. Cause comes from Genesis 15:6, from the Hiphil, which is causative active stem, an aspect of the Hebrew language, where Abraham, that is, we know him today, caused himself to believe. So bringing that Hebraism in, which is very advisable, it's not lost in interpretation. So here it says, "The purpose of the gospel to have been written and remain on record was in order that you all might deliberately cause yourselves to believe." But now that's aorist, the simplest form of action, that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. Then it says, following that, "and in order that while believing, ing," So without spending a lot of time on the I learned how to work a camera and all these other things. Until then, the compelling nature of the content will be the continued and abiding advantage of imcorne.org. However, noteworthy here is the fact that on one hand, it's not necessarily seen because of blind spots, which are conditions originating from a process of conditioning in which a person might be primed. For example, you might be so determined to demonstrate that generation or being born out from God does precede believing that you fail to notice that no text of any kind, no Koine Greek text of any kind of Koine Greek New Testament, does it appear anywhere that generation appears prior to the point of faith. And yes, in John 20:31, it presents the simplest form, believe, followed by the continuous form, believing. And in all places in the Greek New Testament, one text has, "we are graced to be believing," ing. And this is just an example of blind spots, nothing that we should be, I don't suppose, some of the energy around it might be a little escalated for being willing to ignore or unwilling to see or incapable of seeing. I know Dr. John MacArthur of the Master's College and Seminary, very strong Calvinist, Dr. R.C. Sproul, John Piper, Dr. Al Mohler, perhaps the most scholastic being Dr. James White. That is the one most, let's say, skilled in handling the text. But these blind spots need not be so irritating if one just takes time and considers the text that the same author wrote, and he wrote in relationship to what it is to believe and what it is that follows the punctular simplest form of action. So this is just an example of a blind spot. There's numerous ones, and I use the phrase blind spot because of my respect for Dr. James White as he tries to honestly warn people to be cautious about how blind spots can influence the outcome of our interpretation. So that's enough of this. Look it over. Check out 1 John 5:1 and John 20:31.